Hello, my name is Sash and I like to draw, but do you know what else I like? Taking supervillains associated with a specific superhero and putting them into battle against a different superhero. Yeah, I mean, come on, this is episode 3 of Villain Swap. I assume you guys know the drill by now. But just in case you don't. You know them, you love them. The Rogues, the Sinister Six, the Arkham Inmates. The groups of villains that are completely joined at the hip to their respective hero, to the point where it's actually pretty difficult to even think of one without the other. But so many heroes have more villains than you think, and I always like to see things get shaken up a little so the lesser known guys can get a turn. I mean, I can only read so many Joker stories before I start wishing Firefly would show up, you know? That's why for a couple of videos now, I have gathered a list of some iconic Marvel and DC superheroes and rolled the dice to see who gets to switch villains for a bit. And then slowly replacing the already used heroes to ensure that the matchups just keep getting weirder and wilder as we go. So far, Shazam has duked it out with the Blue Snowman of Wonder Woman fame, Daredevil has tussled with the Golden Age Flash villain known as Ragdoll, and Superman himself has gone toe-to-toe with Spidey's old foe, the Sandman. I do have a list of rules to follow though, and you can easily go watch the first video if you need any of them clarified by clicking the card in the corner of the video. Anyway, you guys seem to really like these videos, and I'm in no mood to stop anytime soon, so what do you say we move past all this setup stuff and start mixing up some goodies and some baddies, huh? Alright, Magic Dice, do your worst. Today we have Green Lantern, who will be fighting a Thor villain. Okay, well, this is gonna be interesting because, I don't really know Green Lantern all that well. Well, I mean, I know the Green Lanterns, but I've never been an avid reader. I've mostly read major events they participated in, such as Blackest Night, or seen them as backup characters in other stories. And as for Thor, well, he's Thor. I gotta show at least a little bit of love for a guy based on my country's mythology, right? But again, I've mostly read Thor when he's been part of a bigger team story, even if I would like to read some of his own solo series sometime. On the surface, these two could not be more different from each other. Thor is a person who only rarely passes the torch to someone else, while Green Lantern is a title given to a boatload of characters. One focuses on magic and myth, the other on deep space sci-fi. One can be a fish out of water, the others are usually everyday people like you and me. There really isn't a lot of common ground for me to work with here. Except for the duality of their rogues galleries. For every major space alien or godlike figure that these guys fight, there's a small handful of more conventional Earthborn supervillains among them, usually introduced back in the 60s when superhero comics were still just kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck. And honestly, these are usually my favorites. I don't need the villain to be a galaxy-conquering inhuman entity all the time. Sometimes I just want to see the hero beat the heck out of some guy made out of rocks who wants to steal golden apples or something. So I knew I wanted that. I wanted Green Lantern to fight one of Thor's more conventional supervillains. But the problem is that there's so many different Green Lanterns that the possibilities are basically endless. Because remember, I'm allowed to pick any Green Lantern I want for this. But the right Lantern finally came to me once I saw a particular name on Thor's list of regular dance partners. Dirk Garthway, better known as the Wrecker. The Wrecker, along with the rest of the Wrecking Crew, has pretty much become the prime example of a villain you throw in when you just kinda need to show your hero knocking heads around for a bit. Despite actually potentially being very strong and very, very dangerous. After all, he's a guy with a weapon that imbues him with Asgardian-level strength. However, his boorish personality, lack of ambition, intelligence, and tendency to split the power among his gang has turned him into more of a superhero practice dummy. An iconic one that I couldn't imagine the Marvel Universe without, but still. So in other words, we have a thuggish, easy-to-enrage guy in a green uniform wielding a weapon that gives him great power from an otherworldly source. Now, doesn't that sound a little similar to a particular Green Lantern we know? Doesn't that sound a little bit similar to Guy Gardner? The beauty of the Green Lanterns is that each one has their own very distinct personality that makes them different from the rest. And if you ask me, Guy is by far the most interesting of them. Because he's a total dick. He's arrogant, he's a bully, he can quite frankly be a sexist creep at times, and he looks like an Irish boxer who got bitten by a radioactive boxer dog. Yet he's still a 100% ride or die bro for the side of good when it comes down to brass tacks. He's like the older brother who'll give you a wedgie and then immediately turn around to rearrange the face of the first person who laughs at you for letting him do it. It just makes him delightfully different from so many other heroes who, despite having some flaws, are usually pretty likable. I mean, with Guy, you really had to dig deep to find that heart of gold underneath all the testosterone sometimes. And to me, that not only makes him incredibly entertaining to read, it also makes him a perfect opponent for a guy like the Wrecker. Which is why I gave Guy such a furious expression and had him outright leap into action. I mean, the dude didn't spend time as a Red Lantern for nothing, right? That's actually also sort of why you can see that I'm drawing this based on a pencil sketch rather than spending some time recreating it digitally. I just started doodling one day to try out some different layouts, but I thought this drawing of Guy had so much raw power and anger that I didn't want to risk trying and failing to recreate it. The way he lunges forward, hasn't even formed a coherent shape with his ring yet has it bursting with energy, snarls like an angry dog at a much larger foe. It's just too beautiful to mess with. For this scene, I kind of like to imagine that these two aren't even fighting about anything particularly important. Like maybe Guy knocked over Wrecker's beer or Wrecker said some gross pickup line to Ice or something. And instead of letting the woman who some people think is a literal ice goddess handle things on her own, of course Guy then immediately erupts like a testosterone volcano. So let's put them in a regular city scene, like they just took this outside to the back alley of whatever bar they were just at to cut loose. With Guy leaping in full of rage and Wrecker not thinking any more steps ahead than, I'll just smack him with my crowbar when he gets close enough. And then they'll probably just punch it out, have a laugh over how stupid the fight is, and go have another beer while Ice rolls her eyes and the background goes to hang out with Fire instead. Yeah, that's the kind of energy I envision here. So yeah, sorry if you wanted to see Hal fight Gore the God Butcher or something, but I just consider this way more fun. Alright, that's it for the Green Lanterns. Get on out of here. Let's replace you with, Martian Manhunter? Sure, why not? Anyway, let's let the dice speak once more so we can have Ant-Man fighting a Hawkman villain? Oh boy. Ooh, okay. This one is gonna be a little tough. It's not so much because of Ant-Man though. Even if he used to be a joke in the public consciousness almost on the same level as Aquaman some years ago, the Ant-Man identity is a classic, and he has had a long and storied career in comics at this point. Of the various Ant-Men, I knew right away that I wanted to use my personal favorite, Scott Lang. And no, Hank purist, Scott is not my favorite just because of the movies, alright? Now don't get me wrong, I don't dislike Hank Pym in the slightest, but I find Scott a lot more interesting. A former cat burglar trying his best and often fumbling on the way to being a better person, father, and hero is a lot more engaging to me than Hank's scatterbrained super scientist number 6 energy. And as for Eric O'Grady, look, we've already done one total butthole superhero for this video, okay? So I'm just gonna stick with Scott for now. Eric is way more entertaining as Black Ant anyway. Now, when it comes to picking a Hawkman villain for Ant-Man to fight, I had to confess something. I know next to nothing about Hawkman. And I feel like that's not entirely my fault. Hawkman is an insanely confusing character, and it feels like it's really up to the way the wind blows which one of his 14 backstories happened to be canon this week. Although I do like seeing him in group stories, and I love this sort of gruff Conan the Barbarians with wing look he's got going for him. But I really don't know that much about Hawkman or his enemies, so I'm mostly picking a bad guy based on what I read in articles rather than any personal experience. And my god, does he have a lot of them! Hawkman has been around in some shape or form since the Golden Age, and because of this, he's met a lot of villains that fall everywhere on every possible power scale and thematic spectrum. Aliens, gods, common crooks, you name it, and Hawkman has fought it at least once, it seems. But there was one villain among the bunch that caught my attention, namely Jonathan Cheval, the Monocle. This guy is absolutely, completely, and utterly C-list. He's just some dude who lost his optics business and started building weaponized monocles to take revenge, and he has maybe a handful of stories under his belt before being relegated to glorified cameos. It's a fun and comic booky premise to be sure, but I just don't think he has a lot going for him. At least not until I read the part about how he later got rich patenting his tech, and then found wealthy living so boring that he returned to supervillainy anyway. So we have an older man of wealth and taste who could easily just lean back and enjoy his riches anytime he wants to, going up against a younger former crook who has gone straight and is always trying to better himself. And one wears red while the other wears purple and blue. Yeah, remember what I said in previous episodes about contrast? So, with these two contrasting personalities in mind, I concocted a little story in my head. Monocle, always renting out his services to whoever needs it just to avoid feeling bored, has stolen some kind of important artifact or device. And Scott, finding out somehow that this item is a lot more dangerous than Monocle or even the buyer might realize, decides to steal it back himself rather than wait to mobilize any other heroes. Now, you can't really do an Ant-Man story without playing a bit with the size difference, so I thought of this Jack and the Beanstalk-esque scene, where he's running across the table in some kind of lavish dining hall in Monocle's home. Only for our Jack to be spotted by the Giant and chased down with a powerful Monocle beam. I knew this would be difficult to draw, so using the program Design Doll, I played around a bit with positioning some mannequins I could draw over, and then ended up changing a bunch of stuff anyway because I'm an indecisive dunce. Yep, welcome to art, folks. At first I drew the item he was holding as some kind of magical scepter, but it turned out it would have been too long and unwieldy for Scott to carry and still look good in the drawing, so I switched it out with some kind of vial or fuse, and gave it a little bit of green TMNT ooze-esque quality to it because, I mean, why not? Let's get some more color in there. Hank's armor was surprisingly easier to draw than I anticipated. I must simply be getting better, cause I usually groan at the idea of drawing particularly detailed tech parts of a superhero costume. Well, I mean, the fact that half of it is covered by the vial definitely helps. I think the real beauty of this matchup, though, is actually the monocle. Because this guy shooting a big scary heat beam at Scott gives him an almost kid with a spyglass frying an anthill kind of energy that I just love. It took a bit of doing to draw the beam in a way I wanted and put in some light effects to make it really feel like it generates heat and light, but you know what? I like to think I pulled it off and set the stage for a really exciting little Ant-Man story. The pun is absolutely intended. Well, that's it for Ant-Man, so let's knock him off the list and swap him out with Black Panther. Let's keep that animal rep going and keep making this list weirder. Well, that's it for this round of villain swap, and I like to think that I came up with two very different and exciting action scenes. But the important part is what you think. Which one of these matchups was your favorite? Would you read either of these stories? What kind of matchups do you hope happen in the future? Make sure to tell me all about it in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to see more in the future while you're down there. I'll see you in the next one, folks. Bye bye.